Hello, you guys. Let's talk about least common multiples. Sorry, my puppy now has a squeaky toy, as you can hear. All right, so vocabulary, multiples. Let's say I wanted to list all the multiples of 3. 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 2 is 6, 3 times 3 is 9, 3 times 4 is 12, and so on. I could keep going with multiples of 3. Same thing with multiples of 5. 5 times 1 is 5, 5 times 2 is 10, 5 times 3 is 15, and I could keep going with multiples of 5. Now, if I asked you for all of the common multiples, you would have to say, well, 15 is in common, and if I kept the list going, 30 would be in common, 45, and so on. Now, if I ask you for the least common multiple, that's the smallest multiple that they have in common, because you know it could keep going and going and going. But the smallest one would have to be 15. Now, something cool about fractions, if I ask you for the least common denominator, that's the exact same thing as the LCM of all of the denominators. All right. Now, remember the birthday cake method? We could also use the birthday cake method not only to find the greatest common factor, but also to find the least common multiple. So let's say I wanted to find the least common multiple of 3 and 5. I would list them right next to each other and I'd do the upside down division. Well, of course, nothing goes into them except 1, so I'd put a 1 out here, and then I'd divide. 3 divided by 1 is 3, and 5 divided by 1 is 5. But now this time, to get the LCM, I use my red and I make a big giant L shape. So it's the greatest common factor and the bottom layer of the birthday cake. So 1 times 3 times 5 would give me 15. And of course we know the least common multiple of 3 and 5 is 15. Okay, so let's look at example 1, finding the least common multiple of 6 and 14. So I don't like the way the book does it. I'm going to show you here with the birthday cake method. It is the fastest way I know to show you. Just put the 6 and the 14 right next to each other and do the upside down division. And of course they're both even numbers, so I put a 2 on the outside and I divide. 6 divided by 2 leaves me with 3. 14 divided by 2 leaves me with 7. And since I'm finished with 3 and 7, nothing goes into them except 1, I just use my red and I grab the greatest common factor and the bottom layer of the birthday cake, and all of those numbers make up the LCM. So it's 2 times 3 times 7, which in this case would be 42. Now, if I had asked you what's the greatest common factor of the numbers, you of course would just look at the 2 and tell me the greatest common factor is 2. Okay, so take a look at example 2 with me, finding the LCM of monomials. Remember, you should expect to see variables when they say monomials. So if they want me to find the LCM of 6xy, I write it right there, and 16x squared, I write 16 times x. Remember, just like the greatest common factor, we're going to start with the coefficients, the numbers. 6 and 16, well, they're both even, so I put a 2 on the outside and I divide. 6 divided by 2 leaves me with 3, and I bring down the x, bring down the y. 16 divided by 2 gives me 8, and I bring down the 2 x's. Now with 3 and 8, they have no common factors except 1, so now I just circle any variables that they have in common. So I see they both have an x, so I circle an x, I bring it out here, and then I divide, which means I drop down anything that doesn't have a circle. So I drop the 3 down, drop the y down, drop the x down, drop the 8 down and the x down. Now remember, to get the LCM, you grab the greatest common factor and the bottom layer of the birthday cake. So I put all the numbers together. 2 times 3 times 8, I wrote first, then grab all the letters in alphabetical order. X, and then the y. So then I just simplify. 2 times 3 is 6, 6 times 8 is 48, and then x times x is x to the second power, and I bring down the y. So the LCM is 48x squared y. Okay, take a look at number 1. They want us to find the LCM, and so I just put the 8 and the 18 right next to each other, and I do the upside down division. I notice that they have 2 in common, so I divide the 2 out. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 18 divided by 2 is 9. And since 4 and 9 I'm finished, nothing else goes into them except 1, I just grab the greatest common factor and the bottom layer. So 2 times 4 times 9, 2 times 4 is 8, 8 times 9 is 72, and my LCM is 72. Now, take a look at number 2. You can use this method with 3 numbers, but you just have to be careful, okay? Watch what I do. So I put 4 times 5 times 15. No, I'm sorry. I didn't multiply them. Just 4, 5, and 15. And notice something. If I circle the 4 and I just look at the 5 and the 15, do you see that they have a common factor of 5? So I'm going to circle the 4 and just let it slide down. So I kind of ignore it, but I'm going to divide the 5 from 5 and 15. So I put the 5 on the outside, and then I drop the 4 down. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 15 divided by 5 is 3. And since there's nothing that any of them have in common, not even 2 of them have a common factor, I'm finished. And so then I just grab the greatest common factor of the 2 and the bottom layer. And so that gives me 5 times 4 is 20, times 1 is 20, times 3 is 60. So the LCM of those 3 numbers is 60. Okay, take a look at number 3. I have 12x and then 18x times x. So with the 12 and the 18, I know 6 goes into both, so I put that on the outside and I divide. 12 divided by 6 leaves me 2. I bring down the x. 18 divided by 6 gave me 3, and I drop down the 2 x's. Now with the 2 and the 3, I'm finished, but I notice that they both have an x in common. So I circle one x and I bring it outside here, and then I drop down the 2, drop down the 3, drop down the x. And so now my LCM is the greatest common factor and the bottom layer of the cake. So that's 6 times 2 is 12, 12 times 3 is 36, and then the x times x, so it's 36x squared. Okay, take a look at number 4. I have 4xy and 10xzz. So I start with the 4 and the 10, and I divide the 2 out. So 4 divided by 2 leaves me 2. I drop the x down, drop the y down. 10 divided by 2 gives me 5, and then I drop the x and the 2 z's down. And now I'm finished with the 2 and the 5, but I notice that they have an x in common. So I circle the x and I bring it out here to the greatest common factor. And then I drop the 2 and the y down. I drop the 5 and the 2 z's down. Now remember, don't tell me you're done until you check that bottom layer and see the 2y and the 5zz have nothing else in common. So now I grab the greatest common factor and the bottom layer and I multiply. So 2 times 2 is 4, times 5 is 20, and then I grab the letters in alphabetical order. I grab the x, grab the y, and I grab the 2 z's. So it's 20xyz squared. Okay, now we're going to use the LCM to help us order fractions and mixed numbers. So they want us to order these numbers, 4 and 5/12, 9 over 2, and 33 over 8, from least to greatest. So the first thing you have to do is write the mixed number as an improper fraction. So remember, start at the 12, 12 times 4, and then add 5. So 12 times 4 is 48, plus 5 is 53. So I write 53 over 12. And then they want us to find the LCD. Well, remember, the lowest common denominator of 12 and 2 and 8 is also the LCM. So I'm just going to do the numbers, the denominators, 2 and 8 and 12, and then I do the upside down division, and I notice that 2 goes into all 3 of them, so I divide all 3 of them by 2. 2 divided by 2 gives me 1, 8 divided by 2 gives me 4, 12 divided by 2 gives me 6. Now remember, with 3 numbers, you do the upside down division, and I want you to notice that 2 of the numbers have a common factor. So I'm just going to circle the 1 and kind of let it slide down. I'm going to ignore it for just a second, and then I'm going to say, okay, with the 4 and the 6, 2 goes into both of them, so I'm going to divide a 2 out. So I just let the 1 come down, but 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 6 divided by 2 is 3. And so now I use that as my lowest common denominator. So 2 times 2 is 4, 4 times 1 is 4, 4 times 2 is 8, and 8 times 3 is 24. So I know that 24 is going to be the lowest common denominator. So I grab the 53 over 12 and I write it with 24 in the denominator. So that means I have to do 12 times 2 to give me 24. So 53 times 2 would give me 106. And now I take the 9 over 2 and I also write it with 24 in the denominator. So 2 times 12 would give me 24. 9 times 12 gives me 108. And then I take the 33 over 8 and do the same thing. 8 times 3 would give me 24, so 33 times 3 gives me 99 in the top. And now I can put them in order because they all have the common denominator, so I really just have to look at the numerators, the top numbers. So I know that 99 is the smallest, 99 is smaller than 106, and of course 106 is smaller than 108. So now I just put them back in their original form. So since 99 over 24 is the smallest, that, if I look here, was given to me as 33 over 8. So I put the 33 over 8 first, that's the smallest. And then the middle number is the 106 over 24. So I go back and look at my work. That was the 53 over 12, which was 4 and 5/12. So that's the middle number. And of course, the biggest number is the 108 over 24. And 108 over 24 is 9 over 2. So that's the largest number.